meeting that I go in and I say, goedemiddag, and then they're like, oh, I can discern an accent. You're not from here.
So they automatically have it, they're very standoffish.
Have you ever had that happen to you where they're like trying to figure out where you're from and immediately they just start speaking your language? Even while you're trying to speak?
They automatically would do it anyway.
Pretty much most of the time, yeah.
Even trying to make a reservation for a restaurant and walking in and saying, ik heb een vraag in, can ik make a reservation for dinner for 4 mensen? Like, oh, you want a dinner table for 4 for Saturday night?
And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what I just said.
Or do you say yeah?
I was like, well, is my Dutch that bad that it's like the accent is so terrible or heel slick that you're going to automatically correct it?
Yeah. So you see it as a correction. What do you think is the reason why most people don't continue after, like, I speak to you in Dutch.
Yeah.
I prefer English.
You speak to me in English.
I think it's...
And then I have a choice here. Do I continue speaking Dutch to you? Not to you, but, I mean, why do you think most people then they just give up?
I think it is tricky because most people, well, in Holland, it's kind of compulsory, isn't it, to learn, you start learning English when you're sort of 4 years old or something, I think it is.
Very
so, I mean, there's always a safety net, you know, that sort of, oh, if I can't get by with my Dutch, then the switch just happens, and you don't quite know when it happens, but they just, you know, I find myself changing into English.
But not only that, I mean, when you, as an English speaker, when you make the effort to speak Dutch, there is a double thought process going on. Yeah. And when somebody interrupts that thought process,
then it's gone, isn't it?
Throws you completely, you think, oh, sod it, you know, I'm just going to speak English now. Because, you know, if they didn't understand that I wanted 4 apples, you know, then I'm not going to get anywhere.
There's no point in wasting.
There's no point. And, yeah, you're right. If they detect a slight accent, which of course they will from English speakers, because all English speakers speak differently. I mean, we come probably 100 miles away from each other, completely different accents.
Yeah, there's just that
if they pick up on it, that's it.
Right.
End game.
I think it's important enough to understand what people are saying. You don't have to necessarily respond to them in Dutch, but if you can follow a conversation at a party, they're going to speak.
Can you do that?
Not 100%.
No, so what are you missing out on now that you don't?
Probably just all the juicy gossips and what they're talking about from like their work day or something like that.
Which is actually a part of part of life, you know? I mean, like the juicy gossip is part of life.
Oh, talking about the weather. You can figure that out by looking out the window, but
I think that's where one of the problems with the integration comes in, because we can all laugh about not being able to get stamps at the post office without somebody speaking to us in English. But when you do actually start to mix with some of the Dutch people, and you find that, I don't know about you guys, but as an English speaker, I find actually if you look at the Dutch language, it's similar sort of structure to English.
There's a lot more similarities.
And I actually understand an awful lot of it. Yeah. But as for actually, by the time you've actually thought of what to say to join in with the conversation, it's completely moved on.
But you've been here a year, right? Is that?
I've been here
I think because the speaking side, for me, is also the hardest part. I mean, I can now follow most conversations, which, you know, I'm pretty chuffed about it. It's you know,
after how many months have you been here?
I've been here since February 2008. So
you've made the effort to study.
Well, the course
you can live here for 20, 30 years and still not make the effort if you're not.
And there's a lot of people that I've met on the course that have been here for 10, 20 years or something, and they've just started with it, and they're finding it tough. I mean. Yeah.
So what's the first thing you learn? I mean, I remember that humor was like one of the last things I got. Like you're at a dinner table. You've been invited, everyone's talking Dutch, and you're there and you're really catching parts of the conversation. Like, so what is that like?
It's frustrating because you really feel like you're left out, and you know everybody can speak English, and sometimes they make an effort to speak a little English here and there, or the beginning of the night starts off in English, but it always ends in Dutch. But
so what are you missing out on then? What's your feeling? Like, how do you?
Just gossips. It's more like
you think
social.
It's just gossip?
Yeah, they're probably talking about me that I don't learn Dutch, huh?
No, but that's part of normal life. You know, you want to be included into that.
Why would you bother to socialize with people if you're not part of the group?
A good reason for learning Dutch. Yeah, and are there like this? Are there other things that you've discovered that have helped you because you've dared to learn the language, so that you've actually come to a better understanding of why the Dutch are the way they are, or like?
Still learning, I think.
Yeah, definitely it's a learning curve, and I think it's very easy as an English-speaking person to live here and not even have to get that involved. Everything is available to you in English.
So it's really actually hard to get into the culture.
Unless you really want to.
That's the sign of the times in the world, though, isn't it? Because like countries aren't just one nation countries anymore. There's like many different nationalities within that those borders now. It's so sort of mixed, and that's a good thing as well. But then I seem to think that
certain groups tend to stick together.
Yeah,
too.
and then,
I mean, in New York City, there's Little Italy, there's
exactly.
Chinatown,
I mean, and that's great because there's a lot of diversity.
And here we are, the expats.
I mean, still, even in the U.S., Spanish is a second language, and everything's offered in Spanish in schools for the children. Push 1 or 2 for English or Spanish for banking or anything like that. And I find that a lot of that here as well. It's either 1 for Dutch and 2 for English. Whether
I mean, to be fair,
any sort of information.
We do that in the UK. I mean, we have things in like 20 languages.
And I don't think it's ever going to be,
you
must learn Dutch, you're always going to... No. They're not going to switch the entire country over to everything in Dutch overnight.
No.
If that's what they're looking to do.
Your partner's pro learning Dutch, and you said that you have a perfect example of why it's a pain in the ass to learn Dutch. Tell these two, like, your story about you arrived early here.
I arrived early here for this session, and I thought, oh, I'll nip into a bar over the road. And I wanted a quick drink, so I did the typical English thing and went to the bar with my money, didn't wait. And I asked for a cola in Dutch, kan ik alsjeblieft een cola? And there was a guy sat at the bar and he was laughing his head off, hilarious, you know, really sarcastically laughing his head off at me. Just before this session, it was such a coincidence. And the barman was laughing as well, incidentally. And he turned around and he was still laughing and he said, oh, can you say anything else? I just turned around to him and I said something very, very rude in Dutch. And I told him to rot up. And he completely fell silent, and I just walked away with my drink. And I was just so... I was frustrated, but I kind of felt better about saying it because I proved that I could say something that they probably couldn't say in Dutch. Yeah.
So listen, there are people who are watching this program and really kind of need some inspiration and or vent their frustration. Is there anything else you want to say about the difficulties or the benefits of learning the Dutch language here while you're here?
Well, for emergency's sake, you never know what's going to happen. And if you're going to be driving in the middle of some farm country, you have a flat tire, who's going to help you?
Right. So what do you need? You need
to know the basics.
Like,
at least the basics, and then something, if there's an emergency, what do you do?
Who to call?
And how to ask for help.
How to ask for help.
Definitely.
Graham.
I think particularly if you're coming away from the biggest cities and you're not so much surrounded by the English all the time, and if you've got a partner who is from this country, my girlfriend gave birth last week.
Congratulations.
So we've got a lovely baby daughter, and I think because my girlfriend is from this country, and I want to know the other half of where my daughter is from.
And Richard,
just be persistent with Dutch speakers, and carry on in Dutch. And if you get stuck, just explain that you want to speak Dutch to them. If you can say it in Dutch, that's great. Otherwise, if that just doesn't work at all, just pretend you're Swedish and that you can't speak English, so they have to speak Dutch, which is what I've done a couple of times.
Really? Oh, clever. Very clever.
That's good.
Thank you guys very much. We have some presents for you from the American Book Center.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you guys very much for joining us.
Thanks very much.
And have a wonderful day.
Thank you.